So we're close to wrapping up the offseason outlook series for the Ontario Hockey League here on the channel as we actually wrap up the teams that made it as far as the second round. As today we're going to take a look at the Kingston Frontenacs, who going into the 2024-25 regular season, a lot of people weren't too sure what to expect from the Kingston Frontenacs. Everyone was talking about the big four: Brampton, Brantford, Barrie, and Oshawa. And then everyone else was seen as, okay, maybe a rebuild or maybe they'll battle for the playoffs. But Kingston was somewhere in the middle. There was some unknowns, but they made some pretty nice additions at the start of the regular season. Look at Tuomas Joronen from the Ottawa 67, Cedric Gandon from the Owen Sound Attack. And this team started to show signs that maybe they're going to compete for top spot in the East Division. Now, they would round out the regular season with a record of 40, 25, and 3, good for 88 points. It was a three-way race right down to the finish between Kingston, Brantford, and Oshawa. And what really helped this team out is the additions from Saginaw, where they picked up Joey Willis, Ethan Hay, and Will Bishop, and then Charlie Shankle from the Sioux Greyhounds, looking for that veteran edge for the postseason run. And all signs were pointing that this team meant business. And with Troy Mann getting his first full season behind the bench as a head coach, he had the systems in place, and this team was a real threat. They had their best record on home ice in franchise history. They set a new record for consecutive wins, and they swept the Sudbury Wolves in the first round. They've never swept an opponent in the playoffs before in their franchise history. You look back to when they were even the Kingston Canadians. It was something that they've never done before. So this team getting a lot of firsts. However, it would fall short as they would lose in 7 games to the Barrie Colts in a series that the home team won every game. But there were times where it looked like Kingston may have had the edge at moments. But still, for the Kingston Frontenacs fans, you got to be pretty excited what you saw last season, especially when you compare it to previous seasons. In 2023-24, they finished with 70 points. So that's an 18-point difference from last year into this past season. And that was a first-round exit to the hands of the North Bay Battalion. In 2022-23, they only had 57 points and missed the playoffs by a single point. And then back in 2021-22, 87 points. And that was another second-round exit to the North Bay Battalion. And really, when you look at that history, that line of Dallin Wakely, Anthony Romani, and Owen Van Steensel, they had their way with the Kingston Frontenacs during their career, but Kingston nearly got that last laugh just in the 2025 postseason, but still, oh so close. But still, let's look at the top 10 scores from the playoffs. Cedric Gandon led the way, 10 goals, 7 assists, 17 points. And what was great about Gandon was just how strong he was in the faceoff dot. And that was an area that Kingston had an advantage of for most of the season, especially in the postseason. Second in scoring, Jacob Battaglia, 3 goals, 13 assists, 16 points. Tuomas Joronen, third in scoring with 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points. He was so much fun to follow in that series. I would say he was the series MVP between Barrie and Kingston. Fourth in scoring, Gage Hayes, 4 goals, 9 assists, 13 points. Emil Piniemi, he was fifth in scoring, 4 goals, 6 assists, 10 points. Cal Ewens had 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points. Ben Pickle, who had quite the following at Slush Puppy Place, he was 7th in scoring with 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points. Quentin Burns, 8th in scoring, a goal and 5 assists for 6 points. And then both Ethan Hay and Tyler Hopkins, both 5 assists to round out the top 10 in scoring. Although, to note, you don't see Joey Willis in the top 10 scoring, which is a little surprising. And Ethan Hay not scoring a goal in the postseason, also surprised considering they wanted to bring over that experience and leadership from his run with the Saginaw Spirit when he won the Memorial Cup. But that also goes well with the players they already had. So they had the foundation in place, but just falling short there in Game 7 of the second round. Now, because they traded away Malhotra, who they drafted in the first round of the 2024 OHL priority selection, that meant they had 2 first-round selections. First, they had the number 9 pick, Alex Kulemin, the son of Nikolai Kulemin, who used to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He had 14 goals, 17 assists, 31 points in 31 games last season with the Don Mills Flyers, so a point per game. And Kulemin, also a pretty big kid. I think he's going to fit in quite nicely with the Frontenacs starting next season. I'm still waiting for a commitment there. And then they drafted 17th overall, Matthew Henderson, 6 goals, 20 assists, 26 points in 30 games of work. He played with the Huron Perth Lakers, and he also got some time playing with the Sarnia Legionnaires, where he played 2 games, no points, but considering he's a defenseman, not too shabby there. So the future, I think, is bright. They might take a bit of a step back next season. However, I don't think they're going to fall too far back. Now, the 2005 born overage candidates, it's a long list. So something's got to give here. Going through the forwards, you have Tuomas Jurinen signed with the Vegas Golden Knights. He's also an import. I don't think he comes back next season. That seems unlikely. Ben Pickle, I think he'd be a great OA candidate next season for the Kingston Frontenacs. Joey Willis, Nashville Predators prospect. He's also signed with them. Don't expect him to return next season. Ethan Miedema, he's a Buffalo Sabres prospect, not yet signed. He could be a good candidate for next year. Ethan Hay, a Tampa Bay Lightning prospect, but he's also committed to the University of Miami for the NCAA for next year. Matthew Soto, he could be a good OA candidate. Then you have Will Bishop, who they picked up from Saginaw at the trade deadline. Emil Piniemi, he's a Pittsburgh Penguins prospect. He's also an import and signed. I don't think he comes back for another year at the Kingston Frontenacs. Malik McGowan, his presence, he makes it known out on the ice. He could be a great OA candidate for this team. Then you have Quentin Burns, the St. Louis Blues prospect. He signed Cal Ewens, another defenseman. And then Mason Vicari could come back for an OA season for the Frontenacs. So a lot of good options here for OAs for Kingston. This is going to be pretty tough to pick for Cooper, the general manager of the Kingston Frontenacs. These are all great candidates, the players that are likely to return for another year of junior hockey. Although this also means they're going to have to be busy on the trade front, as teams around the OHL that are looking for another OA might be knocking on the door of the Kingston Frontenacs, trying to give them a call about some of those players and whether or not they could maybe acquire their services going to their final year of eligibility in junior hockey. So really, since this team brought in Troy Mann, there's a different feeling around this organization. It's kind of similar to what UC Hocus brings with the Kitchener Rangers. There's just a lot of graduating pieces, which may hold them back a bit next year. But with the systems in place, I think this team could challenge for maybe home ice, probably in that area between 4th and 6th, 4th, 7th, somewhere in there in the Eastern Conference standings is where I likely see the Kingston Frontenacs falling. But if anything, last year was a great run for this organization that's been longing for a deep playoff run. Not quite there last season, falling in the second round, but I do feel as though there's a lot of positives to take away for this team going forward as an organization, as long as they keep the management structure the way it is, and also Troy Mann being behind the bench. I feel like he was probably an honorable mention for Coach of the Year, right behind UC Hocus. Cooper, of course, winning General Manager of the Year for his move. So the future is bright for Kingston. Maybe next year is a step back, but look out for the Frontenacs. See what they can do maybe in 2 years' time. We could be talking about the Frontenacs as maybe being an early contender for the East Division in 2 years' time. So if you're a fan of the Frontenacs, let me know in the comments section below your thoughts on the team going forward. And do you think this team is on the verge of something special in the next couple of years? Thanks very much for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.